In case you missed it, Melly just faced a huge blow. The federal authorities are now trying to make Portland testify against him. The court recently filed an order that completely separates Melly and Portland. This means they are not allowed to talk, not even through their lawyers. The reason? Prosecutors are planning to try them together in the next court session, hoping Portland will turn on Melly. Trying both of them together works better for the state. It saves time, avoids repeating the process, and increases the chances that one might blame the other during trial. On the other hand, Melly's defense team would prefer to have the cases separated. That way, they could point fingers at each other without much risk, but separating the cases is not guaranteed. The reason is that both Melly and Portland are facing serious charges, capital crimes. Even though the prosecutors are only going for the death penalty against Melly. That part comes later, during the penalty phase. For now, in the guilt phase, their charges are the same. If Melly is found guilty, the judge will then decide if he should face the death penalty. Until then, the scariest part is this: if Portland truly believes he is not guilty, it might be too hard for him to sit quietly and accept a life sentence. He may end up blaming Melly to save himself. This major development came at the same time. Melly's lawyers submitted one last attempt to get him out on bond before the trial in September. His legal team now feels confident that he will finally be released. Melly's mother also gave an emotional update, saying they are still praying and waiting for the judge's decision, which could come at any moment. Melly's team offered a new bond deal. His record label, 300 Entertainment, is ready to pay the bond. If the judge agrees, Melly will be placed on house arrest, wear an ankle monitor, and have full-time security around him. Supporters online believe this new offer is strong. One rapper even posted, "That boy Melly coming home, I feel it." To show that Melly is being treated unfairly in jail, his lawyers also shared proof of the poor conditions he is facing. Melly spoke out about the fear and pain he is experiencing behind bars. His mother, heartbroken, said it makes her feel powerless. She believes the Broward Sheriff's Office should be investigated. According to her, the jail staff are making up their own rules and ignoring the court's decisions. Even though they had a hearing about how Melly is being treated, the judge admitted he does not have full control over the jail. Still, his family and legal team are not giving up. They are pushing for someone to hold the jail accountable. During the trial, one of the most critical pieces of evidence came from GPS data. It showed that right after the shooting happened, Melly ran away from the crime scene and hid in a bush. This information raised a lot of questions. According to the GPS tracking, Melly did not stay with the car or try to help anyone instead. He disappeared into the night. At that same time, Melly was talking to someone on the phone. His voice was quiet, like he was trying not to be heard. He said he thought someone was still chasing him and that a car was following him. When the person on the other end asked if he was okay, Melly said he was. But when asked about his two friends, Sackhazer and Juvie, Melly said he was not sure. He thought they were still in the car but sounded unsure and distant, almost like he was avoiding the question. This moment in the timeline became a key part of the defense. Melly's legal team tried to paint the scene as a surprise attack, a drive-by shooting that caught everyone off guard. His lawyer pointed out that no weapon was ever found at the location of the crime. That alone, they argued, suggested that whoever was responsible for the shooting had quickly left the scene, taking the gun with them. Without a firearm, it becomes very difficult to test any theories or recreate the shooting. The defense leaned heavily on this fact. If there is no weapon, they said, then it is impossible to say with certainty who fired the shots. This detail helped strengthen the claim that Melly might not have been the one who pulled the trigger. Melly's lawyer also explained that a drive-by shooter would have every reason to take the gun and flee. They are not going to leave the weapon behind to be found by police. And since Melly was seen running away with no weapon on him and acting scared, the defense suggested that he, too, was a victim, someone trying to survive, not someone responsible for the attack. Still, the prosecution did not agree. They saw things very differently. In their eyes, Melly's decision to run and hide was not about fear, it was about guilt. They believed that he was not escaping danger, but rather, trying to escape being caught. The fact that he did not call for help, did not stay at the scene, and could not give clear answers about his friends, made the situation look suspicious. What made things more complicated was Melly's behavior after the incident. He did not seem shaken or traumatized. In fact, hours after the shooting, a video surfaced showing Melly laughing and dancing with Portland, looking calm and happy. That video clashed with the image of someone who had just survived a deadly shooting. Prosecutors argued that someone truly in shock or mourning would not act that way. They believed the video was proof that Melly was not the victim, but someone who already knew what had happened. And why? Even though the GPS evidence was a strong part of the case, it could not tell the full story. It showed Melly's location, his movement away from the scene, and the time it all happened. But it could not explain why he ran or what his intentions were. That part had to be filled in by the people involved, and that is where the case became even more tense. With Melly saying he thought he was being chased, the defense argued that he acted how any normal person would in that situation. His reaction, they said, was human. It was survival instinct. He heard gunshots, saw his friends possibly hurt or worse, and ran to protect himself. That was not guilt, they claimed. That was fear. On the other hand, the prosecutors said Melly's entire story was just too convenient. They pointed out that there were no signs of a car chase, no eyewitnesses to support the drive-by theory, and no physical evidence to prove another shooter was involved. If it was a drive-by, where were the shell casings? Where was the damage to other cars or buildings nearby? Why did no one else report hearing or seeing the shooting? The mystery of the missing weapon became one of the biggest unanswered questions. With no gun found, it became one person's word against another's. The GPS data clearly placed Melly at the scene and showed his movements after, but it could not prove whether he was the shooter or a witness running from danger. The courtroom was left trying to figure out, was Melly an innocent bystander caught in the middle of chaos, or was he involved in a planned act of violence that left two of his closest friends dead? At the center of all this, the GPS evidence sat like a double sword. For the defense, it was a lifeline proof that Melly had no weapon and was running away. For the prosecution, it was a red flag proof that Melly was trying to hide something. As the trial continued, both sides kept coming back to that same point. Why did he run? What was he really afraid of? And if he truly had nothing to do with the shooting, why did so many of his actions after the crime raise more questions than answers? But just when it looked like Melly had a chance at being released, prosecutors made a surprising move. They turned their attention to Portland and Melly's ex-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton. Mariah had been hiding outside the U.S. ever since Melly's first trial. She was supposed to testify but never showed up, which eventually got her arrested. Mariah was taken into custody by U.S. Border Patrol at the Miami airport when she returned from overseas. Until then, she had no criminal record. Now, Mariah is in jail at Broward County, and the court is demanding she testify in the upcoming trial. She was allowed to go free under one condition: she must take the stand against Melly. After her arrest, she posted on Facebook, "Thank you to my village. I love y'all so much. God's plan, not mine." Things got worse when prosecutors accused Melly of witness tampering, saying he tried to influence Mariah not to testify. This charge alone can carry another life sentence. Along with that, the state filed 6 more charges against Melly and 2 other people. These charges include directing others to tamper with witnesses, criminal conspiracy, and using illegal devices to communicate, all very serious crimes. Some of these charges also carry life sentences if he is found guilty. Because of the new charges filed against him, YNW Melly has been cut off from using the jail phone for several months now. This has caused even more emotional stress, not just for him, but also for his family, especially his mother. In a heartfelt interview, she spoke out about how unfair it all feels. According to her, even inmates who have already been convicted of serious crimes are allowed to use phones, write letters, and stay in touch with their loved ones. But her son, who has not even been found guilty yet, is being denied those same basic rights. She explained how the jail is not just blocking his calls but also holding back his mail. Letters sent to Melly are never delivered, and he is not even allowed to send letters out. For a mother watching her son go through such treatment behind bars, this has been heartbreaking. He has not been convicted of anything, she said. He should still have the right to speak to his family. The pain in her voice made it clear she feels helpless, like no one is listening and no one cares. Jail officials have claimed that these restrictions are necessary. Their reason: they believe that allowing Melly to communicate with the outside world might lead to more witness tampering. This accusation stems from earlier claims that Melly tried to stop witnesses, like his ex-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton, from testifying against him. To prevent anything like that from happening again, they decided to cut off his communication completely. but the punishment feels harsh, especially to those who believe he is being treated more like someone already convicted than someone still on trial. At the same time, pressure is mounting in another area of the case. Prosecutors are now trying to flip Melly's former friend and co-defendant, Courtland Henry, also known as Bortland. This is not the first time they have pushed for it, but their efforts have grown stronger in recent months. Their goal is simple: get Bortland to turn on Melly and testify against him. What makes the situation more tense is that the relationship between Melly and Bortland has already been damaged. During Melly's first trial, he reportedly placed some of the blame on Bortland in an attempt to defend himself. That move was seen by many as a betrayal. Bortland, once considered Melly's ride or die, was suddenly being painted as the fall guy. The trust they had built was shattered, and the friendship that once held them together began to crumble. From that moment forward, it was clear that the bond between the two was no longer what it used to be. Prosecutors saw this break as an opportunity. If they could convince Bortland that Melly had already turned on him, maybe he would return the favor and cooperate with the state. All they needed was for him to share what he knew, and Melly's case could fall apart. But Bortland has remained silent, at least in court. On social media, though, he has dropped a few hints that suggest he is feeling the pressure. In one tweet, he wrote, "Mind games don't work on people like me," followed by a handshake emoji, which many took as a sign that he was being offered a deal. Was it a warning? A way of saying he was thinking about cooperating? Or was it simply him standing strong, refusing to break? No one knows for sure, but the message caused a stir online. Fans and legal watchers started speculating. Would Bortland really flip on Melly? Could he become the key witness that changes everything? If he does decide to speak, his testimony could be damaging. After all, he was right there on the night of the murders. He was the one who showed up at the hospital with the bodies of Sackheiser and Juvie in the car. Police later found gunpowder on his hands and caught him lying about what happened. He knows details that the public and even the jury might never hear unless he talks. But if he stays quiet, then the state must rely on other pieces of evidence. That includes the GPS data that tracked Melly's movements, the text message he sent hours after the murders saying "I did that," and the video showing Melly and Bortland celebrating like nothing had happened just hours after the killings. Still, nothing would be more powerful than a former best friend testifying in court and confirming the TAP state's version of the story. This is why the jail is keeping such a close eye on Melly. They do not want him contacting anyone who could be involved in the case. They believe that one phone call, one message, or one letter could disrupt everything. But in doing so, they have also cut him off from his support system. And for someone facing a life sentence or even the death penalty, that kind of isolation can be just as damaging as a guilty verdict. For now, Melly waits, cut off from the world, watching as the case builds around him, wondering if the friend he once trusted will be the one to help put him away for good. Courtland Henry, known as Bortland, had arrived at the hospital in a car that had been shot up with 2 bodies inside. He was also wearing different clothes than before. Police later found gunpowder on his hands, which suggested he had fired a weapon. Bortland lied to police about what happened, where it happened, and even claimed he did not have a phone on him, something investigators said was hard to believe. An expert tested Bortland's hands. His right hand had 2 signs of residue, while his left hand also showed particles that match firearm discharge. This was solid proof he had likely fired a gun. After all of this was revealed in court, Bortland responded on Twitter. He posted, "Mind games don't work on people like me," followed by a handshake emoji, making it seemed like he might be ready to take a deal or speak up in court. If Bortland and Melly go to trial together, things could get worse for Melly. That is because the prosecution plans to use Bortland's police interview from the night of the shooting, where he lied to protect Melly. In that interview, Bortland claimed he was driving home from the studio, listening to music and feeling sleepy, when out of nowhere, shots rang out. He said he ducked in panic and almost crashed. But when police pressed for more details, Bortland's story started to fall apart. Officers asked where he had come from and which route he took, and he said he left a studio in Fort Lauderdale, taking I-595 to I-75 South. However, investigators had already searched the area where Bortland said the shooting happened. They found no shell casings, no shattered glass, no signs that any shooting had taken place there. Together. But even with his denial, he could not explain one major thing: the missing evidence. No shell casings, no broken glass, no signs of the drive-by shooting he kept talking about. Nothing at the scene backed up his story. The officers knew something was off. They had shut down the entire area after the crime, going over every inch of it with trained eyes. They walked shoulder to shoulder, combing the scene carefully, but still found nothing that matched what Bortland described. That gap between his version and reality was growing larger by the minute. As they pressed him harder, Bortland began to crack, not with a confession, but with exhaustion. He lowered his head, repeated himself again, and said, "I told y'all the story. That's it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore." His tone was now defensive and irritated. You could tell he was mentally checking out of the conversation, hoping it would end soon. But the detectives were not finished. One of them calmly responded, "There are going to be more questions. This isn't just about you. We don't know your friends the way you do, which is why we have to ask. If we want to understand what really happened, we need your help." It was a moment where the officers tried to connect with him on a more human level. They wanted him to understand that they were not just being difficult, they were trying to solve a double homicide, and they believed Bortland held pieces of the puzzle. But Bortland stayed guarded. He seemed more concerned with protecting himself than helping solve the case. His answers became shorter. His body language closed off. He started avoiding eye contact, keeping his head down. Each time the detectives circled back with new questions, his responses stayed the same. "I don't know, I already told you," or just silence. One of the officers even tried asking the questions differently, hoping a new approach would spark a reaction. "If something like this happened to you, wouldn't you want us to find out who did it?" he asked. Bortland didn't respond. His lips pressed into a thin line, and his eyes stayed locked on the table in front of him. The officers could sense that he knew more than he was letting on. There was something deeper beneath the surface, something he was afraid to say. Was it fear of retaliation? Was he protecting someone? Or did he have a bigger role in the crime than he was admitting? They reminded him again that the sooner the truth came out, the sooner everyone could begin to move forward. But Bortland stayed stuck in the same cycle, repeating the story he had likely practiced in his head dozens of times. The cracks were showing though. His voice was shaking slightly. He seemed overwhelmed, emotionally torn between loyalty, fear, and self-preservation. In the end, it was clear that the detectives were not just facing a suspect, they were facing a wall. And unless Bortland decided to be honest, that wall was not going to come down easily. Trying to reset the conversation, one officer asked how Bortland was driving during the incident. Bortland said he was ducking bullets, just trying to stay alive. "I was driving, ducking, trying not to get hit. I was not worried about anything else." But again, the police reminded him if the shooting really happened where he claimed, there would be evidence. There would be glass on the ground, bullet casings, something. Yet they found nothing. Eventually, one of the officers asked directly, "If you knew who did this, would you tell us?" Instead of answering out loud, Bortland just shook his head no. He seemed too nervous to speak, possibly afraid his voice might crack, giving away what he really knew. Then came even more damaging news. Federal agents revealed a text message from Melly, sent hours after the shooting, that read, "I did that." The message was sent in response to someone checking in on him, asking if he was okay. This response was a major red flag. Another message followed from Melly's account that simply said, "What?" According to him, Melly felt like he and Bortland were doing all the work, while Sack and Juvie were just tagging along and getting paid equally. This information was never meant to be public. Melly had reportedly told King Von in private, expressing his frustration. He felt Sakazar and Juvie were trying to extort him, but Von later told other people in Oblak, and that secret eventually spread. This hidden motive now threatens to destroy Melly's entire defense.